do you go when the ground beneath you starts to liquefy? This is what happened to these people in Palu. They were literally not sure where to go because the ground beneath them was becoming unstable and liquefying, and houses were falling all around them, and literally some of them were just traveling down the road. It's almost as if it was like a lily pad. The ground just started breaking up and moving all over the place, and it was a result of a quake that caused the ground. What a strange sight in the sky. This actually happened more than a year ago over Jerusalem. You have this strange halo effect that to this date no one can really explain what it is or how it happened.
I'm going to talk about Saudi Arabia's $500 billion megacity, Neom. And Neom hopes to be the most advanced city in the world someday. According to DiscoverNeom.com's press release, Neom will be so advanced that it may be possible that robots outnumber humans in the city.
Now let's take a look at this futuristic city called Neom, which I think is about as new world order as it gets. In fact, it could end up being potentially the center of the new world order, where we can live the future as we create the future, unrivaled in concept, unmatched in intelligence, unconstrained by history, and built on humanity's greatest resource, imagination. Neom is a new kind of tomorrow in the making, a place on Earth like nothing on Earth, a new blueprint for sustainable life on a scale never seen before, where inventiveness shapes a new, inspiring era for human civilization. Neom will operate as an independent economic zone with its own laws, taxes and regulations specially created to boost healthy growth and wealth for the region, investors and residents.
With energy that flows from the sun and wind, neighborhoods that can feed and clean themselves, technologies that make life everything it can be. This is where we can prepare together for the next era of human progress.
Now I find this to be very strange. We have this prince in Saudi Arabia wanting to build this massive city called Neom, which means new future. And what's so strange about it is it's going to be 33 times bigger than New York City, and it's going to be built on the real location of Mount Sinai. And here we have the rock of Horeb. This is the rock that Moses split and the water came out. They actually have evidence of water running down in this exact area. You can go look closely at this evidence right here in this video, and it shows that the water actually had eroded rocks here, and there's still a path to where the water was at one time. Now here is the real Mount Sinai. You can see its darkened top. Once it gets on the screen here it is. You can see it in the background there. Off in the distance, you can see how the top has been darkened. When you look at it from an aerial view, it's even far more prominent and obvious. We still even have Moses' altar still here. You can see it on the ground there. They had those troughs for where the animals came in for it, and the altar was to the right there. So all this stuff is still there. Okay, and this is the dry lake bed at the foot of the mountain where they're all able to stay. They had actually a lot of people, obviously, in this caravan in those ancient times. And here we have the golden calf altar. You can see it here with all these large rocks that are all together there. This was actually the altar where they had it, and they have some drawings around it. And you can see also there's some gold actually in the ground here as well, which shows that he had ground it up as he indicated, and there's a lot of gold dust in this area. And here are some of the writings and drawings that were on some of the stones in the area, showing the bull that they were worshiping and such. That they actually got their idea from Egyptian gods. So this is some more evidence that they were in this area.
Northwest of Jebel al-Lawz is the Rock of Horeb that we will explore next. Standing on the crest of a hill, the singular rock stands 50 feet tall and can easily be seen from a great distance. As the people complained once again, asking for water, the Lord heard their cries, and he commanded Moses to strike the rock. Then water gushed out in abundance. The rock was split down the middle, from top to bottom, by the hand of God. Erosion can be seen around the rock from millions of gallons of water flowing out into the nearby camp. He opened the rock and water flowed out. The fissure is so large, one can walk through the split in the rock. The rocks below show clear signs of water erosion. And Moses built an altar and called its name, "The Lord is my banner." Here in the encampment is a large square altar assembled with uncut stones and was built after the defeat of the Amalekites. Also in the encampment are the remains of these circular formations of stone used around the base of their tents. This is clear evidence of prior occupation at this site. Our next destination is Jebel al-Lawz, or Mount Sinai, the Mountain of God. As we pan across the mountains, we see the peak of Mount Sinai that was burned by the presence of God. The blackened peak of Mount Sinai marked the location where the mountain was on fire. Mount Sinai was completely in smoke because the Lord descended upon it in fire. Its smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain quaked greatly. To the right of the peak is the location of Elijah's cave. It is extremely rare for anyone to obtain video of the mountain, since entering Saudi Arabia is very difficult, and they are guarding this mountain from those who would photograph it. Near the base of the mountain are the guardhouse and fence, which surround the area where many artifacts are located that help to authenticate the site. This Saudi sign states, "Archaeological area, warning, unlawful to trespass. Violators are subject to penalties, passed by royal decree." Using Google Earth, one can zoom in and see the guardhouse and fence, which are next to the sign. In the encampment area are many inscriptions, including this wonderful image of a menorah, which is undoubtedly the oldest ever found. Also found in the encampment was this broken millstone that would have ground up the manna that was collected. And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, and he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Google Earth shows us the altar at the base of the mountain with an animal pen next to it that would have held animals to be sacrificed. Here we can see an entrance into the animal pen. The remains of pillars are in this area also. Some pillars are white in color, while others have more of a granite appearance and are very large in diameter, as we can see here. From this same area, one can look upward and see the burned and blackened peak. The rock has literally been burned from the intense heat. When Moses was on the mountain with God, a golden calf was built in the camp by a rebellious group. As Moses was descending the mountain, he saw the people dancing around the golden calf. Here we can see the encampment from the mountain and the location of the altar for the golden calf. Using Google Earth, we can zoom in on the large boulders which comprise the base of the altar. On the ground, we can see the massive large boulders and the fence erected by the Saudi authorities in an effort to preserve this site. Again, we have the government sign warning visitors to keep out. It was on top of these large boulders that the golden calf was placed. 11 of the 12 tribes, save the tribe of Levi, danced around the golden calf in rebellion to God. Panning from Mount Sinai, we peer through the fence and see amazing images that are inscribed on the rocks. Egyptian-style figures of the Egyptian god Hathor have been placed here like graffiti. The bull was placed in high esteem in Egypt, where the children of Israel had just left, so they created images that came natural to their rebellious heart.
Woe unto thee, O Israel! You have sinned a great sin in the sight of God. You are not worthy to receive these 10 commandments.
against you, Moses. You take too much upon yourself. We will not live by your commandments. We're free.
There is no freedom without the law.
Whose law, Moses? Yours? Did you carve those tablets to become a prince over us?
Who is on the Lord's side? Let him come to me.
You have cursed us.
And the people make me do.
Joshua! Joshua!
He showed you no land flowing with milk and honey. I show you a God of gold. Come with me. Follow me.
Blasphemers, idolaters, for this you shall drink bitter waters. God has set before you this day his laws of life and good and death and evil. Those who will not live by the law shall die by the law.
For generations, we have been taught that we had to believe the story of the Exodus on faith alone. We were told that Mount Sinai, where Moses received the Ten Commandments, was located in Egypt, but there was no real evidence to make it believable. No pictures of left-behind artifacts, practically nothing to validate one of the most important stories of the Bible. The Bible says over 70 times that the Israelites went out of Egypt to Midian, which would be mostly or entirely modern-day Saudi Arabia. Is it true that there is very little evidence that the Exodus story happened, or have we actually just been looking in the wrong spot? While the theory of Moses and the Israelites being in Saudi Arabia is a relatively new theory to those of us in the outside world, it isn't new to the locals living there. We were frequently approached by Saudis eager to talk to Americans for the first time face to face. And one of the first things they would say with excitement was, "Did you know Moses was here? Let me show you where he and his people were." Several historical sources, including Josephus, recorded that Mount Sinai is the highest mountain near a city that is today called Al-Bad. Locals refer to Jabal Makla as Jebel Musa, the mountain of Moses.
So you call this one Jabal Musa?
Jabal Musa.
One of the distinguishing features of this mountain is the blackened top that you can see right behind me. The Bible says that God descended upon Mount Sinai as a fire. The blackened peaks. A small handful of Americans tried to sneak into this area in the late 1970s and the 1980s. They were arrested, and their photos and videos were confiscated by the Saudi police. Their evidence was lost. However, images and videos slowly began leaking out to the outside world. According to those who snuck in and were arrested, these sites were being kept secret by the Saudi regime, a theocracy that hid them from the world using fences and police and the threat of force. As I tried to understand why the Saudis were hiding this important site, I began reaching out to sources in the Islamic world. For 15 years, I've been in the fields of intelligence, counterterrorism, and international relations, and one of my best contacts had a story to tell. He used to belong to a jihadist group, and he even had meetings with Pakistani intelligence and close associates of Osama bin Laden. And now, he's speaking out for the first time.
When I was in the jihad world,
We all knew that the Mount Sinai was in Saudi Arabia. The people on the outside, even most Muslims, had no idea that it was there, because we fighters didn't want anyone to know about it. We all knew that the Saudi government hid it and protected it with security, and we all agreed with it. We believe that if a site, even a holy site, is visited by people and used for idolatry, it should be destroyed. But our hiding it, according to the Islamic law, is what saved it, so you can see it today and appreciate it.
Moses flees Egypt after killing an Egyptian who he saw abusing one of the Hebrew slaves. He then escapes to Midian as a fugitive. In Midian, Moses sits by a well and he meets the daughters of Jethro who are getting water for his flock. Moses then marries one of his daughters. We are in the ancient land of Midian right now, near the town that locals describe as originally being the land of Jethro. When we visited this area, multiple Saudis approached us to tell us this is where Jethro and Moses resided. They excitedly pointed to an ancient well that is fenced off and marked as an archaeological site. The Saudis have long believed that this is the well where Moses met the daughters of Jethro, and Muslims from around the world come to see it.
The Lord of hosts will do battle for us. Behold his mighty hand. God opens the sea with the blast of his nostrils. Lead them through the midst of the waters. His will be done. He opens the waters before them, and he bars our way with fire. Let us go from this place. Men cannot fight against a God.
Better to die in battle with a God than live in shame.
Praise God and down into it!
The book of Exodus says that the Red Sea crossing happened at a spot named Yam Suf, but experts have long disagreed about where it was. There are two proposed Red Sea crossing sites from Egypt into Saudi Arabia. The first candidate is at the Straits of Tiran, at the bottom of Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The second candidate is at Egypt's Nuweiba Beach. Dr. Glenn Fritz, who has a PhD in environmental geography, conducted a massive study of the land and all the historical references about where the crossing happened. He found only one exact match: Egypt's Nuweiba Beach. Nuweiba Beach is almost 5 miles long and 3 miles wide, providing enough room for the Israelite population to fit. Here, they'd be trapped with the mountains on both sides, the Red Sea in front of them, and Pharaoh's army right behind them. Amazingly, there is a path under the water from Egypt into Saudi Arabia. The path is not too steep, the Israelites could have easily walked across if the waters were parted. Underwater research by Dr. Leonard Muller showed strange shapes in the coral, leading some to believe that the remains of Pharaoh's army are there. According to this theory, the coral wrapped around the debris from Pharaoh's army and retained the shape of the objects after they dissolved. When they brought a metal detector down to the coral anomalies, the readings were consistent with circular patterns of metal resembling the parts of chariots. We had planned to dive near the possible Red Sea crossing point because it's a public diving site with stores where you can go and rent diving equipment. But we weren't allowed to. The Saudi police showed up, and they stayed with us until we left.
And complaining. Are you not the one who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, that made the depths of the sea a road for the redeemed to cross over? For centuries, this beach has been named for the crossing of the Red Sea at this exact spot. On Google Earth, we can see the name Nuweiba at this point on the beach. This older, detailed map reveals to us the complete name of the beach. Nuweiba is short for Nuweiba al-Muzayina. The name on this beach, Nuweiba al-Muzayina, gives us confirmation that we are in the correct location. The translation of that name means waters of Moses opening. This is where the waters opened by the hand of God. The Lord demonstrated to his people that he would be their protector. Depth charts of the Gulf of Aqaba show the Elat Deep to the north and the Aragonese Deep to the south. Between these two deep areas is a path through the sea. It was very clear, with high visibility. Investigations have revealed artifacts which confirm our previous conclusions about the site. The seafloor is smooth and contains gradual contours. Our first artifact to inspect is this chariot wheel that still has 3 of its 4 spokes, plus the hub is extending upward. We see 90-degree angles here, which are a sign of man-made structure. The Lord looked down upon the army of the Egyptians, and he took off their chariot wheels. The chariot wheel with 6 spokes was the most widely used by the Egyptians. Egyptian chariots were known to use metal hubs in the center of the wheels. Using metal detectors, divers have found metal in the raised hubs that are now covered in coral. Here we see another 4-spoked chariot wheel with 1 spoke missing and a center raised hub. The coral here has preserved the chariot parts by retaining the man-made structure, even after the wood has disappeared. Here we see another wheel suspended on its axle, standing at attention. It has 6 spokes and a raised center hub. Ron Wyatt made many dives here and located many artifacts. This could have once been a chariot cab. This appears to be another round chariot wheel. Horse remains have also been found here, such as this shrunken hoof. Horses are not in the Sinai Peninsula today. Human remains have also been found, such as this coral-covered femur bone on the right. Lab tests confirmed that it is in fact bone. Other bones have also been found. A cross-section reveals the bone inside the coral. Here we see a chariot wheel standing on its axle in this old 1978 footage shot by Ron Wyatt. Next, we see an 8-spoke wheel with 1 spoke missing. 8-spoke wheels were only used during the 18th dynasty, the time of the Exodus. The premier find here at the crossing site is this gold veneer that was left behind from a 4-spoke chariot wheel. The Bible tells us there were 600 choice chariots used in the chase of the children of Israel. This artifact was left behind at a depth of 200 feet. Since specialized equipment would be necessary to raise it to the surface, Today, it is still in the location where it was found. Since there are chariot parts on this side of the Red Sea crossing, could there be other chariot parts on the other side of the Gulf, showing a continuation of artifacts? On the shore opposite of Nuweiba, inspection of the seafloor in Saudi Arabia has also been conducted to see if chariot parts can be found on this side of the Red Sea crossing. While investigating the Saudi Arabian waters, Viveka Pontian found this beautiful round chariot wheel specimen with a raised center hub. This is confirmation of the chariot parts continuing to the other side of the crossing site, opposite Nuweiba. By confirming the location of the Red Sea crossing, one is then able to conclude without a doubt that the real Mount Sinai must be over in Saudi Arabia, in Midian, just as the Bible says.
I am here. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Lord, why do you not hear the cries of their children in the bondage of Egypt? I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. Therefore I will send thee, Moses, unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring my people out of Egypt. Who am I, Lord, that you should send me? How can I lead this people out of bondage? What words can I speak that they will heed? I will teach thee